Today's video is simple but powerful. You will learn a very simple technique to turn your 2D into 3D pictures. You will learn how to get to this using overlapping. But what is overlapping? The first thing we're going to define is what is 2D and what is 3D. So 2D basically defines a picture that has some height and width. So any picture with these two dimensions is going to be a bidimensional picture. So this is going to be a 2D picture. So any picture that can fall into those components is a two-dimensional picture. So it means it's a 2D picture. For example, if I draw this giraffe over here, we can see how this giraffe only has height and width. It doesn't have any depth. That is the third component that is important. So this third component is depth. So in a picture, we're going to have height, as in the other one. This is the first dimension. We're going to have width. This is the second dimension. And we're going to have depth. We're going to see how depth is going to the back of the picture or to the front. So this third dimension is what is going to make your picture look really three-dimensional. Whenever we draw this kind of pictures, we're going to think about perspective. Perspective basically shows how one object is going far away from our sight. If I draw this line and I draw one road, which is one example that everybody has seen, so we're going to see how everything is pointing to this very point at the end. We don't need to know about the perspective theory, but we need to think about how this happens in the real world. So whenever we draw a picture, we need to think about how we're going to add depth to the picture so it looks even more realistic. For example, if I draw one animal, for example, a cat, so I'm going to draw one circle for the head. Remember always to draw using simple shapes. We're going to draw two ears, and we're going to draw a little body over here with one tail in one side. So over here, we understand that this is a cat because of the characteristic that make the animal. But in this case, we want to make this cat being more three-dimensional. How are we going to turn this cat into a three-dimensional one? First thing to do is using overlapping. So overlapping means we're going to add depth to the picture by putting some things in front and some things in the back. Basically, overlapping works in this way. We have one picture, let's say this is a picture over here, and we put another part of the picture in front or behind it. So adding these pictures are going to add some depth to our picture, and it's going to make it look three-dimensional. Overlapping works in layers. So anything that is closer to us is going to be closer to the bottom of the page, and as everything goes up, it's going to go farther and farther. It means it's going to go also higher in the picture, which means if I want to draw an object that is closer to me, I want to draw it closer to the bottom of the page. For example, let's put one flower over here. So this flower, because it starts over here and the cat is over here, we understand that it's closer to us than the cat. But also we are going to overlap it. So overlap it is we're going to put it a little bit on top of the cat. And I'm going to move it so it covers the cat a little bit. In this case, we see how the flower is overlapping the cat. But we can use the same concept in the cat itself. So for example, we're going to do is I'm going to erase the tail over here for a moment. So I'm going to draw other parts of the cat. So I'm going to make this over here curvy. I'm going to draw some legs for the cat. So in this case, I'm going to make this round over here, round over here. So I'm going to draw the legs like a triangle shape over here, going a little bit lower, so it goes under the line of the cat. So I'm going to make the cat legs over here. Just that is going to make us show how the legs are closer to us than the rest of the cat. I'm going to draw some little ovals over here to show the other legs of the cat. So because these legs are lower than the cat's body, we're going to show how these legs are closer to us than the body. Now for the tail, we're going to make the tail starting over here a little bit behind the cat, and it's going to go always going behind the cat a little bit. So we're going to add even more depth to the picture. These very little changes, we're making our cat looking more three-dimensional than it was before. Some other things we can do to add depth to the picture is to add some shadows. I'm going to make a little shadow under his neck. I'm going to add some shadow under his legs. Maybe a little shadow in between his body and the tail. Just a little bit of shadow is enough for showing depth. We can even add some projected shadow from the cat on the floor. These very little tricks are going to help us show our cat more in depth. No matter what you do, always remember your fundamentals. So using simple shapes to create the shape of the cat, in this case, and also remember the shape of the cat. For example, in the face is round, so I'm going to draw everything in a round position. The same over here with the cylinder that is going to create the tail. It's important to understand that you can use basically the same idea, the same fundamentals to every picture. You can draw any two-dimensional picture and then turn it into a three-dimensional picture, just adding extra parts and thinking about overlapping. Can you find how overlapping works in a picture like this? It is everywhere. We see how even a picture like this that looks very complex is actually made using simple shapes and overlapping. But we're going to see how this leg is covering other parts to make the picture more three-dimensional. For example, this leg is covering this leg over here. It covers it up here and down here, just a bit, very subtle. Also, we're going to see how it covers part of his body that is pretty much a rectangular shape. Then we're going to see how his body is covering this arm right here. And also we're going to see how his hand is covering part of his forearm, and also how his biceps is being covered by his forearm and his shoulder. Again, using just very simple shapes. His neck is a little bit over his head, in this case. His head is behind the shoulder and behind the neck, and his hair is everywhere behind all his body. We can even see how some of the sharks are going to be overlapped by this person. We can actually take some of the bubbles and overlap them, so we can have some extra overlapping on the picture. In a scene like this, you're going to see how there's overlapping happening everywhere. And over here, we're going to be able to actually see the layers that make up this picture. We're going to see how all the back trees are possibly over this line. Then the front trees in the back over here are pretty much on this line. Then we see this bush over here, over this line. The closer bushes are on this line. In the rocks, we also see how every rock that is in front is a little bit lower on the page. Also, we're going to see how the characters are actually standing very low on the page, and even some parts in the characters are a little bit higher because they are farther away from us. And finally, we're going to see how these trees in the front with these bushes, they're actually under the line of the picture because they are very, very close to us. We can also find overlapping happening everywhere. For example, we see how these bushes over here that are in front of the picture, very close to me, very close to the camera, are overlapping these trees over here. But the trees are overlapping all the other parts. For example, they are overlapping the unicorn. We can even see that in the unicorn, there's a lot of overlapping. We can see how her leg goes over here, right in front of her body. We're going to see her mane, also a little bit over her body, that is over here. We're going to see her tail going over her back leg, over here. We're going to see also how this leg is overlapped by her body, and also how this leg is being overlapped by her body, by the other leg, and also by her tail. We're going to see how the head is overlapping the neck over here, but it's being overlapped by this part of the mane, but it's also overlapping this part of the mane over here. So there are a lot of layers in just that simple picture. I hope this video was useful for you and that you can use it in your everyday drawing. If you like this video, help me with a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Adios.